Greetings! Welcome to our show, Ghosts R N.E.A.R, where we discuss various aspects of the paranormal and paranormal exploration. I am your host, Keith Johnson, the founder of New England Anomalies Research. And this evening, we have a very, very special guest for you, author Marie D. Jones. Little blurb about her. Marie D. Jones is the author of Looking for God in All the Wrong Places and co-author of more than 30 inspirational books. For new seasons, she is widely published, a writer with dozens of articles, essays, and feature credits. Her work has appeared in For Chicken Soup for the Soul books and other notable anthologies. A trained MUFON field investigator, that's Mutual UFO Network. She is a lifelong student of science, the paranormal, and metaphysics. She is a licensed New Thought minister, meaning she can marry you or bury you. Counselor, award-winning video producer, screenwriter, political activist, and board member of a regional progressive group. She has also appeared on the TV series Ancient Aliens for the History Channel. One of her books, which I've just finished reading, it's fascinating, Psience. And believe me, Marie puts the psi in science. Another one of her books, recently published. This book is from the future. Oop, there it goes. Well, we've got it. But anyway, we're going to be doing a roundtable discussion with Marie, and we'd like to welcome you to our show, Marie D. Jones. Welcome, Marie.
Well, it's great to be here. Thanks for having me, guys.
Good to have you here. It's certainly a pleasure. We really appreciate you making the trip to be in our studio with us this evening. So, Marie, we have a lot of questions, a ton of questions. You have some very, 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 very interesting books out. I've just mentioned the titles of a few, but is there anything in particular you'd like to elaborate on?
Well, the current book that is making the rounds is this book is from the future, which is about the past, present, and future of time travel. Mm-hmm. And it's just such a pervasive topic of interest. Doesn't matter what point in history. People want to know if they can travel back or forward in time, if it's scientifically feasible, why it's such an obsession, what time is, can we control time the way we control space. So my partner Larry Flaxman and I really felt like we wanted to write a sort of time travel 101 book to really teach everybody what the current, even the past research and how it led up to where we are currently, but also where we might be going with time travel research.
Now, how far have we come in the exploration of actual time travel? Of course, there are the theories that this has been going on all along. It continues to go on. We have had visitors from our future, and so people have been caught up in it. The infamous Bermuda Triangle and other places like that. We, of course, have our own version of the Bermuda Triangle, of course. And but what's your take on that, Marie?
We've come really far, but we haven't come far at all. Yeah. I know it doesn't make any sense, but
no, it does make perfect sense.
Theoretically, we've blown through so many ideas that haven't worked, but we're still pushing forward, and the research is ongoing, and yet at the same time, we still keep slamming up against those same limitations. The laws of physics that just don't seem to want to allow us to go forward or backward in time, the paradoxes. But the funny thing is as you mentioned, there's this whole other side to the story that we had to include the book because you can't not include it, and those are the time travel urban legends and conspiracies where you have people who claim that they are or were time travelers, that particular events like the Roswell UFO crash had a time travel element to it, that there were witnesses that claimed that the entities were us from the future. Different urban legends about people who have shown up who seem to appear out of time, quote unquote. So you have that whole element, and then of course the people who claim that our government, our authorities, and the military have been doing their own research for decades and that they've already achieved everything, and they're just keeping it from the public.
What about something like the Philadelphia experiment? How does that fit in with time travel?
That's, one of the big time travel associated urban legends or conspiracies. And when I say conspiracy, I'm not being negative. I'm just saying it's an event that we don't know all the facts about. We still don't even really know if that actually happened. We have eyewitness reports, but there's been a lot of debunking and a lot of back and forth. Allegedly, there was an experiment done that was meant to cloak, sort of an invisibility cloak experiment on the USS Eldridge. This is back in 1940. No, I know I'm going to get the year wrong. 43 or 47?
Sounds close enough.
They're close enough, yeah.
Well, time is relative anyway, so...
Right. The idea was that when the experiment was done, which involved manipulating the electromagnetic field around the ship, and that somehow it sent the ship and crew members into a time slip. And it lasted, from what witnesses claim, just about 10-15 seconds, but enough to disorient people and send the ship into a different time, but then appeared somewhere else completely. But it's all conjecture and speculation because we really still don't have proof. But what's interesting about the Philadelphia experiment is the invisibility cloak part of it, because that is now scientific fact. So whereas at that time, we were ignoring that aspect of it and looking at the time travel element, we now have invisibility cloaks. They involve the microwave field. We've cloaked 2-dimensional, 3-dimensional objects. That's become a reality, sort of Star Trek,
Yeah.
And the time travel element is just something that always came out of eyewitness reports, but there was never any real proof of. It's just one of those situations, just like with Roswell, where one or two people say that they believed this particular thing had a time travel element, and then it just sort of goes viral. And they didn't have the internet back then, but it went viral on its own. And now, of course, it's still an enduring conspiracy. I mean, people still want to know about this event and what really happened.
I wonder on the reality behind the Philadelphia experiment. Of course, there are the urban legends connected with it, and there's even some very gruesome tales about the ship disappearing and then coming back, but people are caught up in the matrix of it, and there were mutilations involved and everything. Like, how much is true behind that?
I didn't see it. Did you?
Well, I'm not responsible for it, but
here's the thing: had we had cell phones back then, there would be a million YouTubes. Because the reports is that several of the crew members were actually melted into the frame of the ship and what have you. But I don't know of anybody who has seen proof. So basically what we're going on, and often they're conflicting, are either eyewitness testimonies or people claiming to have been eyewitness, or testimonies from people who knew an eyewitness.
Yeah, and things change. Yes, even in the 23rd century, I can't change the laws of physics. So we are on our way. But on the topic of UFOs, I wanted to ask you, please tell us about the time that your dad identified a UFO for you.
Okay, when I was a little kid, my dad was the go-to scientist of the neighborhood. He's a geophysicist. He passed away about 1.5 years ago, but for some reason, a lot of the neighbors were obsessed with UFOs. This was back in the late 60s. And there was a really bright light that appeared in the sky. And this was back when we played flashlight tag and baseball out in the streets. And, the parents were all gathered having their little talks and stuff. And it was long before kids went in at the dusk. And you didn't worry about where your children were. So there was a whole mob of people. Because I was actually in the house at the time. There were a whole mob of people that came to our door wanting my dad to come outside and look at the UFO in the sky. And they were so excited. I mean, it was like grown-ups, too, who you would think would know better. So he came out, he took one look, and he said, "It's Venus," and walked back in the house and closed the door. And it was just like, you could have heard a million bubbles bursting.
Well, there must have been somebody among the group said, "I knew that." I knew that. What a spoiler, though, huh? Yeah.
My dad, I mean, he was a brilliant scientist, and one of the reasons why I really got into ufology,
Well, you had to get it from somewhere, right?
A long time. My dad would have his colleagues would come to our house for beer, and they'd play cards, and they'd sit around the round dining table talking about UFOs, and these were oceanographers, astronomers, astrophysicists, geophysicists, seismologists. You know, these were academics, and this was the only place that they could, you know, smoke and have a beer, and I would sit down at my dad's leg under the table and listen. And it was just, it's always stuck in my mind that there are scientists that have always been into this stuff, but they can't openly talk about it.
Mm-hmm. What about, you know, what intrigues me is the sudden disappearances, unexplained disappearances of, you know, of course, we mentioned the Bermuda Triangle, and like Lake Superior on November 10th, 1975, the SS Edmund Fitzgerald vanished without a trace, and there's never any explanation for that. You know, there's theories, but no actual concrete explanation. That's what fascinates me, and disappearances of people, too.
Yeah, I'm fascinated by that, too. The Great Lakes Triangle, I know, is... I had read somewhere that there were actually more disappearances in the Great Lakes Triangle than in the Bermuda Triangle, and, excuse me, the Devil's Triangle off Japan combined, and I had no idea until I looked into it. But you know, nobody's finding the wreckage, the bodies.
Right. Like Flight 19. You know, there's really no trace.
I love that story. So, in a lot of the research that I've done, and this is my pet theory, I'm a real believer in parallel universes. That there are other realities, multiverse, wormholes, what have you. That there may be particular spots on the planet where, for whatever environmental reasons, what there may be, whether it's, you know, barometric pressure or temperature, the atmosphere is just right. There's just different things in the environment that allow for a thinning between, say, our universe and wherever these people are going. It's almost like they're going into a black hole and they're coming out a white hole at the other end. It's like an Earth-based wormhole. And I remember being so shocked when Michio Kaku, the theoretical physicist that I know he does a lot of shows and you know, History Channel, Discovery Channel, and he's always on the news talking about all kinds of stuff. He's become very popular. And I'll never forget when I saw him on a program talking about the Bermuda Triangle. Here's this brilliant theoretical physicist talking about how it could potentially be an Earth-based wormhole. And that's all I had to hear. It was like, whoa, wow. I'm going to read all his books. But if we can't find the stuff, the people, the wreckage, it's got to go somewhere. And I know there's been a lot of, you know, expeditions out to try to find wreckage. And especially, I mean, the Great Lakes Triangle, we're not talking about massive depths in the ocean where we can't really get to. Well, where is this stuff going? How come none of it rises to the surface? How come there's no oil slicks?
That's right.
So, yeah, and I love the movie Close Encounters of the Third Kind because they do play with that idea that,
yes,
you know, these people are actually going somewhere. They're not just lying at the bottom of the sea because of human error, which I know with Flight 19, it's still, the pilot is still to be blamed for that. But I just love the idea that there are other alternative explanations. We just think of them as being so outlandish because they're just still purely theoretical at this point.
I love that idea too. And of course, in our neck of the woods in Massachusetts, we have the Bridgewater Triangle. I guess you're familiar with, and you've been there, Dave?
I have not been there, no.
But you're very familiar with it.
I am very familiar with it, yes.
And you, Val?
Yes, I have been. But I have one question. If things can be disappearing and going into a parallel universe, how come stuff isn't all of a sudden showing up?
Well, I think sometimes it does. Sometimes it actually does. You look around and it may be in a different form, it may be in a different place, a different time or era. Well, what do you think about that, Marie?
I got to tell you, my explanation for cryptids, for ghosts,
yeah,
for UFOs, for aliens,
for New England,
from one of those other realities. If stuff can go in, it can come out.
Right.
And I think that might explain the diversity of things that are reported, because it's all coming from somewhere different.
Exactly. Exactly. We have the Hockomock Swamp where anything from the Thunderbird, pterodactyls to Sasquatch has been sighted reportedly, and of course we have our little miniature puckwudgies, call them, which are little troll-like spirit creatures.
Yeah, you got to figure if there are multiple levels of reality out there, multiple universes, that all kinds of stuff can be coming through, and maybe in different places. I think it has a lot to do with what's happening in the environment. There have to be certain things that align perfectly to allow something from another dimension or parallel universe to be able to slip through. Mm-hmm. And there are some wonderful scientific theories out there that talk about this. Claude Swanson, I love his synchronized universe theory, that there are these sheets of worlds on top of each other, of universes, and every now and then you get a little bit of crosstalk between them. And a lot of it has to do with resonance and vibration, certain frequencies of energy aligning to allow something to slip through, and who knows. But my feeling is, what is any different from saying that a ghost or an alien or some kind of cryptid comes from this world? What's more outlandish than thinking, it's coming from here, but we don't know the origin point, or that it's coming from another universe entirely, and maybe just crossing through a wormhole? It almost makes more sense to think of it that way.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Exactly. Let's touch about out-of-body experiences and bilocation. And I know you have a lot of experience with that, personal experience.
That's my hobby.
Yep, your hobby is a good way of putting it. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, the ability to bilocate or out-of-body experiences. And do you want to touch upon that a little bit?
Yes, I'd love to know how you do it.
How do you do it?
They say
Control
that everyone that does it has very complicated, crazy, and I'm no different. The 27-step processes, but basically, though, a lot of it's luck getting out there, because you can do the same process like 50 days in a row and get out once, but no, I have had some really awesome experiences, both in lucid dreams. Lucid dreams is one of the easiest ways to get out, but some people confuse lucid dreams for out-of-body experiences, but really, from there, you've got to make the actual separation. So,
and out of body, you'd be awake. You'd be in the waking reality rather than asleep.
And yeah. So what I consider a real out-of-body experience is when you can look around you and identify where you are, as opposed to where your body is. Sometimes you see your body.
I know my body's back there.
Yeah. and you get to actually see the identical reality, but you're from a different perspective. So it's really cool.
It's kind of remote viewing in a sense. It's very similar to that. Being able to look at something that's off in a distance, but your body is physically in one place. It's almost like you're projecting your consciousness or your awareness to somewhere else.
And I know you, Dave, have had some experiences with that too, and some of it's very personal, but you have had some experiences where dreams have foretold or come true.
Yeah, but these days I'm having a lot of trouble with that because I'm such an insomniac. I never get to sleep.
Oh, no, you're just like me.
Yeah. I've had an experience or two, but that was when I was much younger. I think I've grown out of it now.
The whole precognitive dream thing, I don't think I've ever met anybody who hasn't had one. But we hear most people say that they didn't trust it enough to really pay attention to it until they found out that it had really come true. So I can only imagine how many experiences we have that we just totally ignore because we're so focused on, getting up and getting dressed and going to work and everything. Right. Just like with deja vu, we trivialize it. We don't slow down long enough to try to really figure out, hey, what's going on here? Is this a glimpse into another reality? Or we just sort of blow through these experiences.
I think it would be interesting if we just stopped and took a few minutes every day and just said, what do we perceive as real and what is not real? You know, what happened during my day that looks odd or something's funny about the day?
I think all of those things, anything that you could put under the umbrella of paranormal, are glimpses of other realities or you know, other universes, other whatever, that we usually ignore, that we're usually distracted from, or, you know, our brains are really trained to filter information that's important for our survival. So if this stuff isn't important to us, it's going to kind of go on over here. But what I've noticed is that the more I've tried to slow down and pay attention, those, especially deja vu, and Larry and I wrote a whole book on it called The Deja Vu Enigma, because I was really blown away that when you actually try to sink yourself into the experience when you're having it, it feels like it's you in two realities. You know, it's not some weird memory glitch. I'm not remembering one thing that came into one eye before the other eye processed it. It really does feel like one of those bizarre times that we're reminded that this reality is just one level or one layer of, you know, whatever, Larry, we call it the grid. Mm-hmm. This grid of realities that are all intersected and connected, and every now and then something happens where you just go, whoa.
Right. Well, that's true. Deja vu, that's extremely interesting. And, of course, you know, it could be a neurological experience as well, but there's been some fascinating experiences. And in the course of my paranormal investigations, if I'm with an investigator that mentions I'm getting deja vu here, I'll always stop and say, please describe what you are feeling, what you're experiencing. So many people just gloss right over that. I think it could be very valuable.
And believe it or not, what Larry and I found out is that deja vu is one of the most widely researched by the scientific community subjects that you might call paranormal, because to them, no matter how much research they do, they can't quite figure out what it is. They've done neurological, you know, memory-based research. They can create deja vu in a clinical setting, but they can't figure out how it's triggered when you're just walking down the street. So it's really a very popular topic for scientific research. That really surprised us. We figured the scientific community would trivialize it the way that we do.
Really. But has Dr. Michael Persinger experimented with that? Has he had any success with that?
He's done, he was doing a lot of work with manipulating the certain parts of the brain, the temporal lobe, and people would, not everybody, but a certain percentage of people would have a deja vu experience. Gosh, there's been a number of people that have done some amazing experiments, and a lot of times deja vu is a side effect of what they may be doing. So Rick Strassman, for example, was doing DMT research, and as a side effect, a lot of the volunteers that were taking the DMT were also having deja vu. So he started to make some connections between the levels of DMT in the brain and deja vu. And Persinger had his God helmet, and he was stimulating people's temporal lobes. And one of the side effects of that, along with hallucinations and a whole host of other things, was the experience of very strong deja vu. So it seems to be part of the same group of things that happen with the temporal lobe. And I know poltergeist phenomena is also related to the temporal lobe. And one of the things that was discovered in some of the research is that people who have grand mal seizures have very strong deja vu at the moment the grand mal seizure begins. So it's like, wow, okay, we know we're in the brain, but why?
Right, TLE, temporal lobe epilepsy. And I'm sorry that my wife Sandra couldn't join us tonight. She's home with our son, but she's very knowledgeable about Dr. Michael Persinger's experiments and research. And but we have done a lot of research, and it comes in handy when we're doing our investigations. You know, as my colleagues know here, one of the things we do ask, are you sleeping close to an alarm clock or digital alarm clock or anything electrical which could set that off? You know?
Right, exactly. Everything is influencing our brains. Even though we think an alarm clock, the digital readout may not be a very powerful field, it is influencing us. And
well, I'm wondering, is it influencing us, or is it opening something up?
Either one, yeah. And I like to think, and here's I've always felt that there are two things that have to be the physiological and the environmental. If we could figure out what elements in both come together perfectly to make someone have a paranormal experience, then, that's when I think we can start actually making people see ghosts and entities and what have you, because it seems to me that the paranormal community has been focused on the external, the exterior, the environmental.
Right.
What about us? We're the common denominator in all this. You have to have a human to experience this. So what physiologically might be going on with us that makes us suddenly have an experience, or makes 3 people in a room see something, but the other 7 don't?
Exactly. And here's a good story for you. In fact, there's this house in Harrisville, Rhode Island. It's an 18th century farmhouse, and I've been there numerous times. Dave, Val, Dan, and Janine, we've all investigated there. One of the previous families was in there. The mother of the family happened to, it's known as a very, very haunted house, so to speak, but the mother of the family happened to look into one of the rooms, and she saw what looked like a 19th century family getting ready for dinner. The thing is that one of the gentlemen looked around, nudged the fellow next to him, and pointed to her. So she was the anomaly looking at them. They perceived her as well.
That's wild, because that's a weird time slip there, too. Mm-hmm. You've not only got the element of the interaction between 2 different realities, but the time frames, the timelines are different.
Right. In the course of our paranormal investigations, how many beings have we been haunting by going through these houses and these locations? How do they perceive us?
Right. And I always think if there are all these intersecting points between realities, there could be one right now in the room you guys are sitting in, and you're being observed by beings from another universe, another timeline. And, we don't necessarily have to always find a quote-unquote haunted location, because maybe this stuff is just everywhere, and we're not physically trained to perceive it.
Okay, Marie, please tell us about some of your upcoming books.
I have a book coming out in October of this year with Larry Flaxman called The Grid, Exploring the Hidden Infrastructure of Reality. And it's a culmination of the work that he and I have done over the last 6 years on what we think some of the physiological and environmental elements are that create our reality and the perception of other realities. And then in January of 2014, we have a book coming out called Viral Mythology, and that is about the transmission of information in ancient times. How is it that so many images appeared in different cultures all over the world at the very same time? How was information passed along? How did it go viral without the aid of computers and cell phones and social networking? What might have been going on there? So it'll have a little bit of an ancient alien connection. And beyond that, we'll see.
Okay, well, thank you so much for joining us. It's been a great pleasure, and hopefully we can have you here in person.
That would be wonderful. It's been fun, guys.
God bless. We hope to see you and talk to you again soon.
Thank you. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Good night from Ghosts R N.E.A.R.